We are just like musical instruments, and there's a harmony in any living thing. Like when we're balanced and in tune, we ring out like a perfectly tuned instrument. So these remedies kind of go through each little mistunement in your vital force, bringing it into harmony. It's beautiful.
Welcome to the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacey Phillips. As a leading manifestation advisor with a process that's, well, radically different from the old New Age model, mine is rooted in psychology, neuroscience, and my energetic gifts. I created this podcast to help you expand your subconscious limiting beliefs about the potential of deserving the manifestations you're calling in. Therefore, you're tuning into this podcast series to show your subconscious that anything you desire is possible. And by pressing play, you've already started the process of manifesting it. I'm really excited to be back today. I feel like what I get to talk about today has been in the making now for 8 months. So the fact that we finally get to have this conversation and finally get to share this with you is just really rewarding. But before I get into that, I just want to kind of touch back on the intro, the channeling for 2021 of what was coming up at the beginning of the year for everybody, which is a lot of us are being really pushed against a deep inner child wound. And that's what we're focusing on this month altogether is unblocked inner child. Not a challenge, just going to continue focusing as much together collectively through a workshop so that you have the support there and you have the motivation and the push, just as I need. So you'll be seeing the coaches talk about it inside of our community pathway group if you're a pathway member. You'll also hear me jumping on Instagram stories once a week to kind of cover what we're up to this month. And so exciting, Kay on our team and Grace made a calendar for how we can approach Unblocked Inner Child together for the next 3 weeks. So you can find that totally free, linked below. And that's how we're all going to be approaching it. We want to give you this guidance throughout the year so that we all kind of stay on track, unblock, and manifest together. So last week, I really touched on how most of us are being pushed against this inner child wound that's deep. And I wanted to share this with you because I think Jessica Gill, the co-host of this podcast, summarized it so perfectly. We were having a little chat before a meeting last week, and she was like, yes, when I heard your intro, that's exactly, what I was coming up against. And I was like, I know, Jessica, the energetics aren't totally like a worth thing. It's not a thing you have to like jump off a cliff or leave, or it's more of, and she said, it's really presenting to be like, are you going to address this to really, really unblock it for good? And that's exactly what's going on. So as we all go through Unblocked Inner Child together, also note multiple triggers might be coming up for you this month that don't appear like they have something to do with that particular wound that's presenting early this year. However, they're all little symptoms, shoot-offs from it. And I promise you that as you go through Unblocked Inner Child, as you're doing DIs this month, you're going to see, shit, it's all connected. So I finally get to tell you out of pure joy of my heart that we are finally releasing our very, very, very first product collaboration. People have been asking us to do products for years. I've loved that this is a fully zero waste company, so I've been incredibly selective, all of us have on the team, about what a product could look like. Therefore, we really wanted our first collaboration to be with something that I know is unbelievably effective, that I believe in with all of my heart, and that is already going to sustain and help another business that's currently established that I personally use all of the time. And there couldn't be a better company to check all of those boxes than Alexa Smart's Flower Remedies. And I know that she's so incredibly exclusive about who she collaborates with as well. So it felt like the biggest no-brainer. Why? Because, well, I'm actually going to give you some backstory on my experience with Flower Remedies before I go into this particular one. For years, I had dabbled at Whole Foods or health food stores and tried little Bach remedies, or I would try little homeopaths, not directly through a practitioner. And they really never did much for me. So I was like, I think my constitution's too heavy for this. They don't really work for me. And it wasn't until I very kismetly, which we talk about in today's episode, ran into Alexis at Cookbook in Echo Park out of nowhere. And we just started chatting and we were like, oh my gosh, we're so on the same page. And she was like, I would love to treat you to a session, where she created my very first custom remedy. It changed my life. and many remedies have since. I've talked about this actually a couple of times before on other podcasts, and certainly the first podcast episode that we have together that you can find linked below, which is such a riveting listen. I took that remedy and basically the third week, as she suggested, because it was so tailored to my exact needs, and she says that if you take remedies that aren't in direct alignment with exactly what you're feeling right now, you won't even feel any difference in them, which is what I had been experiencing in the past. Same with homeopathy. If it's not the right homeopathic remedy for exactly the symptoms you're going through, you're not going to feel anything. So this particular one she made me, I ended up week 3 on the dot, just as she said. And she even texted me a week after this. I ended up booking myself in a Palm Springs hotel, having a complete meltdown and fully restructuring our company. I think this was maybe 3 years ago. And it was the very first point that I could unblock enough through this remedy to step back in order to allow the company to progress. Because I had grown up so controlling and needing to control my environment, hold the world on my shoulders at all time, being in the driver's seat. And I let go to let grow. This was the remedy that did it for me, the one that she made for me. And I had a full breakdown, a meltdown. I ended up calling the woman we were working with at the time, who was a creative consultant, and just saying, I need everything to change. And she really facilitated it. But had I have not been subconsciously and energetically unblocked enough for it, things wouldn't have transpired to what they are. And so that was my very first experience with an Alexa Smart custom remedy. Then last Christmas, I was having the most stressful time of my life. I can't even remember, this is how effective it was, what exactly was going on, but I got in touch with her. She prescribed me a homeopath, and she prescribed me one of her personal remedies that are inside of her shop that anybody can buy. I took them, and I think I screamed from the rooftops telling everybody about this particular remedy. It's called Unburden, and it literally made me unburden everything in my life to the point where it's like I could have sold everything and moved to an ashram or something. I was so unburdened, and it was so powerful. And I was even telling so many of my different friends at the time, like Krista of almost 30 and Jenna, and we were all dying because Jenna's like, I need an IV of this. And I was like, don't take it unless you're ready to really unburden, not realizing that everybody has a very different experience with what their burdens are. So it was really effective for her, totally transformative for me. We talk about it in this episode as well. So needless to say, I deeply believe in her flower essences. She's done a post in the past, which will be linked below, where we had her go through every one of our workshops and basically link up the type of remedy that's really powerful for it. So what we did for this remedy altogether was we created one remedy called Unblocked, and it basically does exactly what everybody's here to do when they're doing the workshop: how to manifest, unblocked inner child, unblocked shadow, and the deep imaginings. And so what I really want to stress is this isn't a spiritual bypass means to not do this work. It takes all of the unblocking you're doing to a far deeper level and gives you the catalyst to put things in motion, just as I experienced with that very first remedy. So that's why this month we're doing Unblocked Inner Child in conjunction with taking this remedy, Unblocked. It's amazing. And actually, I think this is the 4th iteration because we did so many trials and tests on it with the team. We did feedback in our community group to ask, when you feel blocked, what's going on for you, to find this exact formula that's perfect. So if you're feeling any unworthiness, held back by past programming, lack of direction, doubting your intuition, untapped potential, or fear of failure, you've come to the right remedy. And the benefits is self-love and worthiness, reprogramming limiting beliefs, knowing your purpose, trusting your pings, confidence, ability to manifest. So we go deep into this episode today. I'm going to introduce Alexis Smart for the second time. Actually, many times I've talked about her much before. And you will learn much deeper about not only this particular remedy, but about homeopathy and flower remedies in general. They're going to blow your mind. They're so, so powerful. And you can find how to purchase Unblocked linked below. So before we kick all of this off, I want to give a really deep thanks to Grace on the team, who's responsible for the design of the label and a lot of the mastermind of this. She actually was the first to propose this concept and idea of collaborating together. She too in the past has worked with Alexis, so they and all of us had a beautiful relationship through this process. Also, the entire team, including my brother, who's never done anything like this, who were gracious enough to be guinea pigs and take several iterations of the remedy to find the perfect one for everybody. And certainly, I want to thank Alexis and her team who have facilitated, gone back and forth, multiple shippings, tons of creative ideas to really, really nail this perfect iteration. So yeah, excited for all of you to try and let us know what you think. So Alexis is, and if anybody is curious to go deeper, I really implore you to listen to that very first episode we had, because we go deep into her past of training and how she came to be the practitioner she is today. But she's a dear friend. She's a Bach flower remedy practitioner for over 15 years, working with mentors in the direct lineage of Dr. Bach. Pre-pandemic, she would go to Greece every year and England to train deeper. She's also a practicing homeopath. She's developed her own formulas during many years as a flower remedy practitioner by treating people one-on-one and seeing them heal from issues they thought were impossible to overcome. I'm so excited for you to hear how this all works and to really see how this can support and take you much deeper. Let's give it a listen. Well, the very first question I have to ask, 2021, from a homeopathic and a flower remedy place, what do you intuit and anticipate will be the best corrections for people in 2021 or healing?
I mean, not to be dark, but to be real. What's interesting is I feel like I'm privy to knowing what's happening in the society or in our community, because I see the sales of which remedies are selling. And I get these private messages, what should I take? This is how I feel. Or I took Soul Purpose and then I got really angry or whatever. So I feel like I've been with everybody going through these stages. It's like how they say there's stages of grief, like first shock and then denial and then bargaining. And, so what I feel like has been happening is that we've been going through these stages as we adapt and we find strength within ourselves at each new stage when we have to go, okay, I can overcome this. And it's kind of making us like we're in spiritual boot camp. There's something like where it's bringing out all of these things like rapid evolution in people. Like they're talking about ascending, and there's some huge spiritual transformation going on in people I'm seeing.
And so what does that look like, or aspects of it? Because I know when you're looking homeopathically, but you start to look at qualities or aspects. Well, how does that present?
Well, it's kind of like we're confronted with our humanness right now, which what I'm saying is that, you and I talk about, I treat people for their constitutions, which are like their natures and their core selves and their souls, like their essence. But there's a thing that's bigger than that, that's a human thing. Like all humans will experience certain things the same. That's why I'm able to make these universal formulas, is we all kind of respond to heartbreak the same. So that's why I have a heartbreak formula, because that condition transcends whether you're an A-type personality or a dreamy person or, So I think what's happening is we're confronting this like humanness, this universal thing. Like we all went through shock and then we all went through disbelief and grief. And so we've been having to confront these human things rapidly. Like most people will go through one of them like once every 5 years. And in having to do this, no one's guiding us. There's no like manual that comes with this except to wash your hands into the distant. Like all the directions are about
a mask. Yeah.
Yeah. And like how to separate. But emotionally or spiritually, there's no support for anybody.
Or economically.
Economically. I mean, both my parents are English, and they went through, my mom was born during World War II. You know, London was bombed for like 70 days straight, something like that. And my dad was born after. And he said, because I was like, this is insane. How can they make people do this? And he said, you know, this is what happens. And he was in times of war, and this is like what people have gone through these things before. But anyway, this is a long way of saying what I think is happening is that, like, because we are, in a sense, being our own parents and our own healers, because no one's guiding us through this thing that we've never been through before, it's helping us access something that's kind of like a deeper thing than we've ever experienced in our lives.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. Especially, you know, first world, super privileged. None of us have a lot of experience in all of the different dynamics that are coming up around this. Certainly many other cultures who experience war and you know, have had to experience a lot and overcome it. And so it is really accurate. I think the way you're describing it, you know, spiritually having to find a huge, deep sense of self, autonomy, and resilience is profound.
Yes. And I feel like it's Marie Kondoing us. Like, who do I want to be in my arc? Who do I want to spend time with? Who do I miss? You get these, you know, memories of the people that I want to talk to. It's not the same as before.
It's interesting. That's what I predicted at the top of it as well. From an energetic manifestation standpoint, I was like, this is here to knock us into our authenticity. You know, it's basically everything's going to fall off that isn't truthful to our authentic code or our true self.
Exactly. That's what I'm feeling. But I do feel, because I talk to people every day who are suffering, that's why they call me. So I get to feel and see people suffering and in pain right now, but with a desire to heal. So sometimes too, what's happening is all the stuff that's coming up from this is bringing up the opportunity to heal childhood stuff. You know, like, I'm restricted. I can't do anything that I want to do. I can't. And then you find out, okay, this is your original wound. You had these restrictive parents that weren't loving, and it was just rules, rules, rules. And, you know, for someone who's lived like as a freedom junkie, this will be their opportunity to heal some of that stuff.
This is a little bit of a segue, but I do feel like it'll tie in. What are your thoughts on resolutions versus intentions?
Oh, I never did them. I hate them.
Same.
Fuck that. You know why? Because I have versions of that as like a reformed eating disorder sufferer and self-condemning perfectionist, and that, like, a lot of my life. And even as a spiritual person, like, I had all these things I'd always set up for myself, like rules and aspirations, or like, I'm going to eat all raw for 6 months, or I'm going to meditate every day, for just rules for what I thought was good. But what happens is you create an inner authority, like you have this inner prison warden that's like always watching you. And then your little kid self that wants to play and have fun inside is like, how do I bust out of this? And then you're going to go the opposite. And like, you always go the opposite in extreme to rebel against this rule you've set up. And it just has never worked for me.
And do you feel like, and I guess this is I've already announced it in the intro, but do you feel like the Unblocked Remedy that you've created, that we've teamed up on, does it have any remedies in it that are particularly supportive for this month when people traditionally resolve things or they do resolutions, exactly what you're talking about, that can actually heal the root of those?
Yeah. So, and it will come at it from different angles. So one of them is like, if you are coming at life and your life from a place of forward motion, and there's nothing inhibiting you or holding you back, and anything you want to do or create, you can do because you're not blocked, then you don't need to create a set of rules and disciplines for yourself to follow externally, because it's going to be coming from your inner directive that's like, you know, sparked by joy and your purpose. So, like, say it's totally right for you to eat raw. It's like what your soul needs and your spirit, and you're getting that download that that's what you should do. You won't have to do it from rules, but it'll help connect you to these inner knowings rather than from what you think is right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So rather than external pressure or societal programming, X, Y, and Z, you'll be actually acting from an authentic place that you're lit up by.
Totally. And I think it's going to help people during this time too, because we're all actually probably in the process of being programmed and deprogrammed daily. Like, what is my intuition telling me? And oh, the other thing is that there are remedies too, because I'm not here to judge anybody if you do make a resolution and that's helpful for you. Some people are great and they make lists. They need a structure like that. And if you are like that, then there's remedies to help you with integrating information and learning from old past things so that you're not repeating old patterns and you're breaking habits. So like the neuroplasticity remedies that are going to help you implement new patterns of behavior and thought. So if you are going in that direction, great. Then we've got those to support you in this remedy too. So it's kind of cool.
Well, that's a really good segue to get into kind of talking and discussing this remedy in particular, like what is going on there? What is it doing in general? And I'll let you do a deep dive into it.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'll say that why this is so cool that we're doing this together is that I'd known you from around for years. We knew each other, but I hadn't done your work. And we ran into each other one day just by chance. And I needed to meet you that day so badly because I was in a crisis in my living situation. Anyway, you gave me the best advice ever. And the way you were speaking, I was like, this is how I speak and this is how I think. I just wasn't doing it for myself. So as we started talking, and I did a session for you, and you were like, the way I was talking, you said, this is how I speak and think. And then we decided to work together, and I recommended all these different formulas for different workshops and reparent and shadow. And as I kind of became familiar with your work, I realized we work in exactly the same way. And that when people first come to see me, they may come because they've decided they have writer's block or they want to do some manifesting and this and that. But I learned through years of treating people that, okay, you have to treat the old things first and childhood wounds, and you have to clear away a lot of stuff before you can bring in big new things because there's no room for them to come in. So usually when I treat people in the first few months, I'm giving a lot of remedies that help your language, like reparent, which is healing old trauma, removing their limiting beliefs of this programming. And it doesn't always have to be that they had a huge traumatic experience, but it could have been one small event in their childhoods where someone said, your painting is shit, Bobby, or, and then you never painted again. But what if that was your real purpose, was to be a painter, and so you're going to be conflicted your whole life. And so I would do a lot of remedies that would kind of heal the original wound, whatever it was, and then also remove the memories that live on that continually inform our daily choices unconsciously.
Which is the neuroplasticity.
Yeah. Yeah. So this remedy, the unblocked remedy, has remedies for that because that's where we have to start. It's foundational. You have to start there, just like you always say to start with this workshop, right? The two that you recommend to start with.
Yeah, it's once you learn the formula through how to manifest, it's always, which was formerly reparent, is inner child and shadow, which is interesting. And I wanted to hear your perspective, but I want you to continue this first. We are pairing, all of us as a community are doing inner child this month again in conjunction with taking the remedy.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is we never stop treating the inner child. So even if when people come back to me a year later and they're so unblocked and healed from old stuff, like what happens is it comes back cyclically, and every time it comes back, it's less intense and it's less of a duration. It's like minor keys and, a little bit of a hint of something. Oh, there's that thing again.
So you were explaining essentially, what the foundation of this remedy is. If you're experiencing X, Y, and Z, this would be good for you. And what you were starting out with is that no matter who you're working with, because we have such a similar crossover, you're always treating and what did you call it? You've always called it something in the session. It's like the underlining issues before you begin to treat the thing that they're wanting.
Yeah, so we start everyone with remedies to heal old wounds. It's kind of like you got to patch up. There's so many metaphors, but like if you have a boat with a hole in it, you have to patch that hole up before you put it out to sea. So I might get someone that's like, I want to go out to sea and take a trip around the world, but you have to patch that hole up first. So there's remedies to kind of repair old trauma and grief, and remedies to help you let go of the past so that you're kind of a clean slate operating from the present. And then when I did your, I call it like Lacy Phillips speed dating, because when I recommended all the remedies for your different workshop, I was like, wow, okay, for money, for career, for love, for all these different things, I'm like, it all comes back to self-love and worthiness. Like that feels like the core of your teaching.
100%.
Like no matter what you're doing, like if I thought, okay, I only have one remedy for the Lacy Phillips people and for your work, it would be pine, which is in this formula. And I think which will be in any formula that if we ever do other ones together. Pine is for self-love. Like when you read about it, it says for guilt. But guilt is such a kind of specific thing, but it's a deep feeling of like that you don't deserve good things or a good relationship or to be treated well or to get money or I feel bad about that or I should be doing that. Like just a kind of self-suppressing, self-negating thing. And it could manifest in a little way, like just feeling uncomfortable with compliments or gifts or something, like you just notice that you're uncomfortable. Or it could be really deep to where it's self-hatred and choosing really abusive partners or choosing unconsciously, of course, all that stuff. So it can be the whole spectrum of where lack of self-love will show up. So what this remedy does is it really gives you this feeling of like you deserve, first of all, you deserve to be incarnated. Some people unconsciously from childhood trauma feel like they don't actually deserve to be here.
Or they're unwanted or a burden.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. People say sorry all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They bang into you and step on your toe. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. And apologizing when you have to say your needs, right? Like that's a common one is, hey, I'm really sorry. Could you not do this thing that hurts me? It comes up in relationships a lot. And yeah, being in the way, there's just so many ways it can show up. And a lot of the time I've noticed that it's the one that's we're least conscious of. And it's not until you take that remedy and you start shifting that you go, oh my God, I can't believe how many of my choices were informed by that delusion that I'm not worth whatever it is that I want. So it's kind of like the pine negative condition is kind of like, no matter what you want in life or you're trying for, if you need pine, imagine that there's like, a car, like a beautiful race car, and you think you're giving it tons of gas, and the pine is the emergency brake that's stopping that car from going. So there's always a thing within you that's stopping the good from happening or stopping the love from coming or the money or,
Yep, the sabotaging.
Yeah. So there's tons of other remedies in the formula, but that one alone is going to do so much.
One of the things that was really interesting is I think we went through 3 iterations.
Yeah.
And we finally went to the Pathway Community Group and we did a survey. And when we're like, when you're blocked, what are you feeling? And it was so helpful, I think, in the last iteration. And what we came up with when it came time for you to truly formulate this incredibly effective unblocked, what it was is if you feel unworthiness, held back by past programming, lack of direction, doubting your intuition, untapped potential, or fear of failure. And that was what was really cool when you were choosing the actual remedies themselves inside of this one. The benefits are self-love and worthiness, reprogramming limiting beliefs, so that neuroplasticity element, knowing your purpose, trusting your pings, confidence, and ability to manifest. So that's one thing I wanted to kind of segue into. And this is what I love about remedies. And we'll get into this because my mom, you just treated her. She now is a few months sober. And I really believe in especially homeopathy and flower remedies for sobriety, because though I think the community aspect of AA and many elements of it are really, really powerful, I think one thing that's never really addressed is that childhood wounding. And so I get to see in real time how impactful these things are. It's literally the same work we do here, but it's like it crumbles away these extra layers that are making us self-sabotage or not our authentic selves, or the many, many layers we can have. So kind of talking about one aspect, the neuroplasticity aspect that happens when you're on a flower remedy is mind-blowing. After 4 weeks of taking this little bottle 4 times a day, like droppers 4 times a day for about a month, you literally change into a different person.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I started doing this, because I had been seeing therapists for years and doing a lot of spiritual therapy and healing, and they were all beneficial, but especially with talk therapy, I had this feeling like I don't feel different, but I feel like I'm super articulate at telling other people how fucked up I am. And I know why. Great. It was almost like ignorance is bliss. Like, oh, great. Now I know everything and I feel worse. But it was helpful. I'm not saying that talk therapy is not helpful, but I didn't really see a lot of changes in my behavior or patterns, or just more of a tendency to be neurotic about stuff and analyze myself and try behavioral changes, like, don't just do the opposite of what you've been doing. So then when I discovered flower remedies, I did, after 1 month on my first formula, I changed completely, like things that I thought were actually part of my true character, my being, that they left me. And I realized, oh, I'm not that at all. Like, I thought I'd been an indecisive person my whole life. And I took this remedy and suddenly I was just super clear and decisive. And I realized that's not who I am. That's what I developed, an indecisive tendency, because I had a lot of chaos in my childhood. And I found, oh, go with the flow, like never plan anything, never expect, just be watery and don't have a firm idea of what you want, because it's never going to go that way. And that's where indecision came from for me, was to be adaptable. Anyway, flower remedies work by accessing the unconscious and things that are patterns. So everything in us that isn't our true nature are just patterns. Like if water runs over a piece of rock for thousands of years, there's going to be this pattern in that rock that it's not part of the rock, right? But it's this energy that goes there, because wherever energy goes, things will grow. In the same way, like I'm sure your new neuroplasticist, yeah, I'm sure she could tell us like what happens in the actual brain that are these like neural pathways, and that's the more scientific stuff that I don't really know about. But what flower remedies for me do is that they kind of rechannel those and get you out of this repetitive loop of feelings or thoughts that aren't really your true self. But they don't just remove them by negating them, they actually replace them with, and how they work is, like I always use holly because it's a good example. Holly is used for jealousy, hatred, really strong feelings. So when you take holly, which is for those negative feelings, it works not by just removing the negative, which is kind of what we're used to with allopathy, modern medicine, is you just suppress and remove the negative. You have an acid stomach, you take antacid. You have overgrowth of bacteria, you take an antibiotic. And so we're so programmed to think that way. But flower remedies work by flooding you with a positive feeling. So with holly, you take holly and you're flooded with love feelings and trust, because jealousy is really just lack of trust.
Yeah, you're afraid you'll lose what you have. It'll get taken away.
Yeah. And so when you're just flooded with love, in the presence of love like that, there's you cannot feel jealousy. You cannot feel hatred. It's impossible. It's like lightness. You can't have darkness and light. So rather than just removing negative traits, you're flooded with the positive, and then the negative kind of melts away or just dissipates. And so that's how these flower remedies work, to kind of reprogram. Is you don't really spend a lot of time thinking about the negative. They just go.
And it's a vibrational medicine, right? So it's literally changing your vibration.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like homeopathy, acupuncture is vibrational, Reiki, everything.
Qigong.
Yeah. Qigong, Tai Chi. So until when did quantum physics appear? But before that, like we operated from our knowledge of Newtonian physics, which Isaac Newton was like, it's things you can see and they're tangible that you can see, principles that we call it mechanistic. So like everything's by a mechanism and you can see and they're large. And then quantum physics is tiny things and on the atomic level. And, that would be things like Wi-Fi and radio and invisible things. So medicine like this, even though homeopathy was invented 200 years ago or over 200, and flower remedies now are almost 100 years old, invented by a British doctor named Edward Bach in the 30s. He was also a homeopath, which is what kind of gave him the idea for flower remedies. They are minute. So what makes them vibrational is that they're made by, we pick a blossom at the peak of bloom and we float it in a crystal bowl. It has to be crystal, a bowl of spring water, preferably by a nearby stream. You could make one up at the Forest House.
I know, I'm thinking that we should do that. I should have you up sometime and we should do that for fun.
Yes, we have to. And the water, then you float the blossom in the bowl of spring water, and then that water becomes imprinted with the healing power of that flower. So that water then has patterns. So, and what we've learned through the, work of that Japanese scientist, Masaru Emoto, who he did this studies with water where he played music to different water and would look at it under a microscope, or he said words to water or wrote words. And the water will reflect those negative or positive words or music. They'd all be different crystalline structures. So we're learning that water has an ability to be programmed with information. Water holds information. So these flower remedies, in Bach therapy, there's 38 flower remedies, and each remedy has within it the information of that healing flower, and they're all for different conditions. So, but they're very, very dilute. So if you were to take this to a lab, it would just be water, which sounds like snake oil, but it's not. And homeopathy is created similarly, very dilute. So there's no substance anymore. And that's where it gets into like nanoparticle kind of quantum stuff, is that it's imprinted with the vibrational frequency of that plant. So, every living thing has a vibrational frequency, and in the same way, every emotion has a vibrational frequency. So just like I was talking about holly, jealousy might have a big wave frequency that's intense. And like the vibrational frequency of holly will be the exact same frequency. And so when you take that remedy, it balances your vibration. So we are just like musical instruments, and there's a harmony in any living thing. Like there's harmony in nature. And when we're balanced and in tune, we ring out like a perfectly tuned instrument. It's like, say, you're tuning a guitar with 6 strings and taking a remedy, a formula with 6 essences. You're kind of going through each little mistunement in your vital force and kind of bringing it into harmony. Each little thing, like one might be low self-worth, and one might be old trauma, and one might be nostalgia and living in the past, all that stuff. So, and then when you're taking a formula which kind of addresses each little mistunement, you just feel it. You just feel free. And
like when you hit the right piano key.
Totally. And we know, like, even when you're not a musician, when you hear dissonance, when someone, and they play the wrong chord, you're like, oh, Jesus Christ. You know what that sounds like. And you know what it sounds like when you hear a symphony of all those instruments together, and it makes you cry. It brings you to tears. And that's what we are like when we are living from that place of harmony within ourselves, peace within ourselves. It's beautiful. And it's also very magnetic, as you know, and it's very attractive. And I don't mean that in a, like, you can seduce people with it or love potion, but it attracts what you are. And so what happens is when you are vibrating at that frequency, the things that now externally come into your life will resonate with that vibration without you choosing, like, or making lists about what you want to bring in or calling in the one or the job you want. That's all helpful because it's like, giving you a map and stuff. But like, you will literally not be attracted anymore to things that are low vibration or high vibrational things, and people will start coming to you because that's what you're putting out.
Yeah, this is the same as our work. That's why this was the perfect collaboration crossover. How do you feel about us doing Inner Child at the same time of taking this remedy for 4 weeks?
I love it. I love it because one of the things is, like, when I first started taking flower remedies, nobody I knew was taking them. No one knew about them. And I was going through this magical transformation alone and I was trying to tell people what was happening. My mom was taking them. So we'd have these talks like, oh, are you feeling that? And yes, it's incredible. And then this happened and I had this amazing dream. And it's really great that you guys are all doing this together as a community. And also part of our process as humans here is we're meant to learn lessons and learn about ourselves and our nature. So your work and the writing you do and the DIs and the reflections, you can process at the same time as you're having these transformations, and it can only strengthen it and make you kind of enjoy it more, like savor it.
So I'm quickly interrupting this episode to invite you, if you're ready to start your manifestation journey, or if anything you've heard in our manifestation episodes has piqued your interest to begin. We have a la carte workshops in everything from the basics bundle, which is what we recommend to everyone who starts. It's the formula that actually teaches you how to manifest, unblocked inner child, and unblocked shadow. We also have a la carte workshops on love and money. But the real gem is the Pathway membership because it encompasses every single workshop we have. It's a year-long membership with full access to the few a la carte offerings we have and exclusive workshops not available anywhere else, such as the daily practice, which is what everybody in the Pathway uses, hopefully at least 3 times a week to daily, in order to truly create the new neural pathways that one needs in order to manifest, and houses the library of our deep imaginings, which is our unique hypnosis process that allows you to get into your subconscious and overwrite those old neural pathways, creating the new ones. You can use our special code EXPANDED, all caps, EXPANDED, to receive $20 off your first a la carte workshop purchase or $20 off your first month of the Pathway. Again, that's all caps, EXPANDED, EXPANDED. Okay, now back to the episode. One thing I heard once from a homeopath that I wanted to get your 2 cents on that I actually did after you and I worked together. So just recently here in December, I had, this cough that would not go away and congestion. I mean, I had it for, I think, 3 weeks. And I still have a tiny little remnants, but it's moving out. But anyway, after you did the whole homeopathy session with me, you deduced that the remedy I would need for my specific situation was Rumex 30 to try, start with that and see. And I had heard from a homeopath once that if you write a remedy down on a piece of paper and you put water over it, that it will program that energetic patterning into the water. So I did that the first night because I didn't have access until the next day to pick up the remedy. What are your thoughts? I mean, not that I'm suggesting everybody do this, but just showing how powerful what you just were saying is.
Totally. I learned about this in school, and one of the teachers in homeopathy school, one of the teachers was talking about this, and she said, guys, don't repeat this because homeopaths have this thing where we're already challenged and called quacks and like, this can't possibly work. And we have a tendency to we don't want to share things like that because it sounds more woo-woo. And so in the class, she shared that if she's treating someone over the phone for an acute and they call her in the middle of the night and I've got a high fever, I'm really worried, I'm burning up, my head is bursting, blah, blah, blah. And they don't have their remedy kit. And she'll say, okay, well, I want to give you Belladonna 30C for your fever, but you don't have that. So write Belladonna on a piece of paper, get a glass of spring water, put it over that word, draw a circle around it, and leave the water on there for 5 minutes and then take a sip. And she said that it worked. And, she said they didn't work for very long, that we call them paper remedies, and that they would only work for just till the morning, till they could get to the store to get the real remedy. But what it's telling you is that Belladonna 30C is a frequency. It's a vibrational frequency. I mean, like I said, when you take a pellet from the health food store of Belladonna 30, you're not taking Belladonna, the poison. You're taking a sugar pill that's been sprayed with a water that's been diluted 1,000 times, that then a drop of that, the dilution is so crazy. So, it's similar. I mean, that just kind of shows the power. And it's not the power of the mind, because that patient who made the Belladonna on paper probably didn't know it. She's not a homeopathy student and doesn't know about Belladonna, right?
So she doesn't know the intention behind it.
Yeah, or not even just the calling in of that, calling Belladonna 30C frequency. It's like being on a ham radio and tuning into a radio station.
Totally. Yeah. And I could feel it. So I was like, I have to ask Alexis about this when we're doing our session, because I felt like it got it moving. And then the next day I was able to pick up the remedy, which, we touched in a few times, and it obviously has been really helpful. So I wanted to cover that. And on that note too, this is actually really funny because, and I always say this before I have one of these podcast interviews, that I'm actually the perfect contender to be talking about this, because I had tried a little bit of flower remedies here, a little bit of homeopathy there, arnica always being very successful for me for bruises and surgery and stuff. But anytime I would try stuff, it wouldn't really do much. And my thought was always like, oh, I have a really strong constitution. Like that woo-woo stuff doesn't work on me. But what I came to find out after working with you and having so much success through both homeopathy and especially flower remedy as well, I just wasn't getting the right remedies for exactly the vibrational thing that was going on for me, because I was self-prescribing.
Exactly. I had the same experience, because I saw flower remedies when I was 7 in a health food store where my aunt works. And when you read something like, wow, this helps with confidence, or whatever it promises to do, that sounds really neat, like flower drops that help with you don't feel beautiful, or, and I always take them and buy them at Whole Foods. And then I just didn't feel anything. And I didn't really think about them much. And then I got a remedy that was prescribed by a practitioner who knew what she was doing. And I had that life-changing experience. And so the thing with vibrational medicine, this is why they can't commodify it, and why it's hard to do double-blind tests and all the scientific tests that they do with drugs, is that it's for the individual. So it has to be a vibrational match for you for them to work. So arnica will work for everyone, because everyone's taking it they go, oh, I hurt myself at the gym, or I had a car accident, or I feel sore. Then arnica will work for that, for everybody, because that's kind of a universal, just like I was talking about heartbreak being universal, that we all experience it in the same way. We're all going to experience soft tissue damage in the same way.
Or our nervous systems all operate the exact same way.
Yeah. But for kind of soul conditions, you have to take the one that matches your state for it to resonate.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to talk about, which we may have covered in the last episode, so certainly it'll be linked below, anybody who wants to hear the first episode we have with Alexis, but I want to cover this again. One thing that was really interesting, because I love systems, obviously, I love astrology and all of these different types of systems, and homeopathy has its own version of it. And so when you first met me, you were like, I bet you're phosphorus, and which I think you are as well, right?
Yeah, underneath all the layers.
A lot of people that I know, because they've worked with you, are phosphorus. So that's a whole nother conversation to be like, are we attracted to each other? But my mom wasn't. She was one of the first that I heard of after you treated her. She was something different. Talk about that. I don't know what it's called, but your type.
Well, okay. So there's in homeopathy, homeopathy is even more finicky and specific and perfectionist and detail oriented than flower remedies. So with homeopathy, you find a remedy that's a match to someone's physical, mental, and emotional symptoms. And there's couple thousand remedies, maybe a couple hundred that are commonly used. But there's also within homeopathy, in the last maybe 50 years especially, there's been more of a kind of Jungian archetypal type of homeopathy, which looks at constitutional types. And this is like you came in as something, you have a certain disposition, and everyone who needs that remedy that you need will have these certain traits. So you are total phosphorus, and phosphorus people are very, like I always say, it's like phosphorescence. If you've ever seen that in the ocean, when there's phosphorescence at night, it's that glowing light. Phosphorus people have that light about them. They radiate. They're sparkly and charismatic and magical and open, and they're very sensitive to everything, good and bad. So they can feel ecstasy from looking at a sunset or being in nature, or they're communicators and they connect with others, and they're empaths. And the world is a very rich place for a phosphorus person. But they also, because of their psychic openness, they are in danger of anxiety. They can feel anxious for no reason. And it's often like they're picking up on someone else's energy. So they can feel, they're very sensitive to energy, and being around negative people can just drain them, or they can feel ungrounded. But they tend to be interested in things like art and healing and magical things. And they tend to be psychic, natural psychics, intuitive. And they're not interested in the earthy 9-to-5 work a day stuff. They're like adventurous and young spirited. And they look a certain way. Like they have long limbs, shiny hair, bright, shiny eyes. They're thirsty. They get low blood sugar easily if they don't eat. They're kind of like fairies or Peter Pan. I mean, they always look about 10 years younger than they are. And they're kind of mischievous, and sounds like everyone wants to be that remedy. And so, yeah, when I met you, I totally thought you were that remedy. But when we did our session, I saw that you were so this is also what, the way flower remedies work too, is there's who you are, and then there's the state you're in. And those are two different things. And, I had a homeopath and teacher named Dr. Luke de Schepper, who, like, as homeopaths, we're all scared of being certain remedies. Like when I'd go see him, I'd just be like, just don't give me lachesis. I'm not a lachesis. And lachesis is from snake venom, and it's for like real jealous, possessive people and talkative, excessively talkative. And I was like, dear God, just don't let me be lachesis. I don't want to be that. And then one day he gave me lachesis. I'm like, I can't believe it was my shadow. Like I didn't want to acknowledge that and I said, am I really lachesis, Dr. Luke? Like I thought you thought I was phosphorus or silica when we met. And, I was taking it as this like character assassination. And he said, no, Alexis, it's not who you are. It's just a state you're in. It's just a state you're passing through. And then that statement and the work with flower remedies freed me in a way from, like, you don't have to be afraid of any feeling that you have. It's a state you're passing through, and it's all humans pass through every emotional state at some point in their lives, right? So I took lachesis, and all my jealousy and talkative, my intensity kind of diminished, and I went back to the phosphorus person I was. I'm totally being lachesis right now, right? I'm so talkative.
No, I love it. And I love what you're depicting right now, because it's so truthful to everything. I believe in manifestation, right? Because there's your authentic self, your whole worthy authentic self at the base. And there's an onion that's created around you through life of pain, shame. It's exactly, what you talk about through flower remedies and homeopathy. You have these imprintations that happen. And so the work of, what you're doing or what we're doing is to take those layers off. So we're always moving through, like you said, a different phase of what's going on. And that's what's being treated at this very time.
Yeah, exactly. And I always think of this, maybe we talked about this in the first session, so sorry if I'm being redundant, but Michelangelo created the statue of David, which is really like considered like human perfection or a perfect man, like this statue. And he was asked, how did you create David? It was a masterpiece. And he said it was easy. I just removed everything that was not David.
Wow.
And I went, oh my God, that is my goal. When you come to see me for a remedy, I'm removing everything that is not Lacey, everything that is not Alexis. And because we don't need extra and more. We have everything within us. I believe as soon as we're a thought, or we decide to be incarnated into our, come to our parents as a soul, we have our spirit, and our soul has a mission and an essence within us of what we need to experience in this lifetime. And we don't need extra things and more information and more stuff. We need to remove all of the inhibitions to being that soul.
Could not 1,000% agree more. Could not agree more.
Isn't it great?
It's amazing. And, it's so interesting because even like in, the manifestation, like rhetoric that a lot of us are familiar with from before, it's all about getting to the positive. But not every person incarnates that's just like a happy, bubbly, positive person. Everybody is so authentically different, and their purpose here is so different and unique. And so it's really all about getting to your true, authentic self and having that be whole and worthy again in order to pursue and allow everything to come to you. So I really could not agree more.
Yeah. And the thing is that life can be hard, but when you are coming from the authentic self, things happen very easily. And I just know that from my own life. Everything was a struggle when I was not in that place. And then, I don't know, things change when you're coming from that place.
So to wrap up Unblocked, this remedy, that all of us can take together this month and do Inner Child together, who would this be most beneficial for? Like, is this great for somebody who's done a lot of the work, on themselves through many different avenues? Is this great for the person who's just entering into any of this in general? Is it for everyone? It's a foundational remedy?
It is. It is a foundational remedy. And it's interesting that you said, who's this good for? Because after we did our first podcast together, I got a lot of clients from you. Thank you. And for your followers. So a lot of my custom sessions, as well as, people bought my formulas online, but I did a lot of custom sessions with people who had gone through, some were just new to your work and found me through that. And some were like, oh, I've been doing this for years. And the people who had been doing your work for a long time, like they totally spoke my language, and they were so healed. And they'd be like, oh, I used to have unworthy, I used to feel that way a lot more, unworthy or whatever it was. But after doing Lacey's work, I feel like I let a lot of that go. And I say, okay, well, I'm still going to give you this remedy for that because it's on a slightly different level that it's going to access. And then your followers, I'm telling you, they heal rapidly. When you're planting a garden and you get the soil perfect, like you have to nourish the soil first and you have to do all this preparation before you plant something. It felt like all of the To Be Magnetic family has done all this work on themselves. And so they're just ready for this final like catapult into magnificence or something. So yeah. That was a long answer to say really anyone at any stage, because they're just compatible. It's like the work they're doing in their unconscious and conscious minds are opening them up to the remedies, even working more quickly and more effectively with no resistance. So that's the long answer for that.
I love that. And I really agree, because many of the remedies in this formula I had taken when I first started working with you. And I got to see, no matter, I had been doing TBM for like the work that we do, for years, but they did transform me on a different level. So it was like an even deeper vibrational level that enhanced everything everything I was doing, had done, and am continuing to do. And a short tidbit tip that I want to give everybody, because it's been so powerful to watch in Max and my mom as well, is if your partner or somebody in your life that's close to you that you love, and we always tell people, we're like, don't try to force this work on other people. Even if you're having profound results, don't do it. Like people, and I'm such a projector in that way. I'm like, people have to come to this when they're ready, or they want, or they're seeing the results in you and they're like, okay, I'm ready to do that. However, this is one of the best roundabout things, is getting them this remedy. It'll do a lot of the unblocking for them without them having to get into this work yet. It's amazing.
Yes, you're right. Like rather than what I was talking about, which was you were already doing their work with you and then you take the remedy, you could go reverse engineer and you could take the remedy and it will open you up to this work and these concepts and helping your mind be flexible while you're introducing all this new information. And absolutely.
Yeah, I got to see that in real time with Max. He wasn't open and curious on his own about doing this work until he had done your remedies. And so it's a really powerful for people who aren't really there or wanting it already, but it'll be so beneficial. It's literally a dropper jar that they take 4 times a day under the tongue for a month. And it's transformational. So I like to give people that tip. It's amazing.
Yeah, if you do sit-ups every day, you're going to have abs, right? And you just take your drops every day. And then I don't have abs or do sit-ups, but I can take drops. Like I like what's fun and easy. And, so
you're basically French. Like any of my French friends and stuff, they don't fuss and go deep. It's like they do it's the pleasures of life, and they do the things that are going to have the most happiness and best results with the least amount of lifting.
Oh, I'm French. Yes. Well, that changes everything. Like if I come out in some weird outfit and I think I look weird, but you're like, no, you look French. Oh, okay, cool. As long as I look French.
Oh yeah. All things French. So chic.
Yeah. So that's why flower remedies appealed to me, because they didn't require me to do anything, or I can take drops. I can do that. So yeah, it's good for that kind of person, French people.
Very chic French people.
Yeah, je suis magnétique.
Yeah.
Or to be être magnétique.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you already listed all the qualities of this formula. They're like nuanced, like what is the difference between confidence and self-love? They're very similar, but they're different remedies.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, now I have to move on to some selfish, curious stuff.
Good, let's do.
You were so helpful for me in the first trimester. I was so sick, and you ended up helping me. I think it was phosphorus, right?
Sepia.
That's what it was, sepia. That was so helpful last year too.
Mm-hmm. You had nausea.
Exactly. Let's talk a little bit about homeopathy when it comes to pregnancy, because I'm very curious now preparing for birth. So let's talk about first, because that was so helpful in the beginning, the sepia for nausea.
Yeah. So, okay. First of all, a lot of doulas or some doulas work with homeopathic remedies, and they know just the remedies that are good for pregnancy and childbirth. They're not homeopaths, but you can learn enough as a lay person, they call it, to treat yourself during pregnancy and childbirth and after. But the thing is, I just want to stress that the best remedy for you during pregnancy will be the best remedy for you. Like it has to be the remedy that matches your symptoms. So don't get hung up on looking for pregnancy remedies. It'll be the remedy that matches your symptoms. But however, sepia, which I prescribed for you during the nausea, does have an affinity for hormonal issues. So there are certain remedies that we know of that have affinity for hormonal things. Pulsatilla, sepia, and lachesis, that one I was given, are top ones. And sepia is very good, ladies, after pregnancy, postpartum depression, where, this one, I will say, when I said there aren't remedies specifically for this, but it drives me nuts. Like when I always hear these like movie stars like Brooke Shields, or I heard some other people talking about that they had this crazy postpartum depression. They felt no love for the baby. They felt dead inside, like all this stuff. I go, oh my God, that's sepia. Sepia can feel that way, dead inside or disconnected, a kind of detached feeling. And I'm not sure what causes that, but the hormone changes, and also sepia is a remedy for depletion, like you feel incredibly exhausted. And so in the old books, medical books, they would say, like, for over vigorous nursing, like if your mom and your baby is just like, God, they're sucking the life force from me. So you can get into a sepia state where you feel utterly drained. So definitely keep that in mind if you're having any kind of stuff like that. Or even just fatigue, like real exhaustion after birth, where you feel drained, that can help bring you back. It's also great for hormonal stuff like certain kinds of PMS, but make sure you look at the specific symptoms. There will be a detachment from people you love best, which, Lacey, you didn't have that. It was just like really for the physical symptoms you were having.
I did have, what you were talking about, and that's what I think helped you also determine I could do nothing but lie on the couch and watch Gilmore Girls. I was like not interested in life, in work, in anything. I was literally non-functional.
That's right. That's right. Oh, and sepia women have absolute aversion to sex. They're just no libido. They feel masculine sometimes, but just definitely no sexual desire. So, and you can have all these feelings without being necessarily hormonal or pregnant or,
Yeah, you treated me with it the holiday season in conjunction with Unburden. It was a very powerful combination.
That's right.
Which is when I had my most profound transformation through homeopathy and flower remedies. I'd had much luck and a lot going on, but that was like, whoa, amazing. But it was a lot to do with hormones and blood sugar. Last year is when you hit it on the nail with that.
That's right. But yeah, the best way is, during pregnancy is that you're taking remedies that keep you happy and balanced. So it's really just whatever remedy is a match for you, but then there are remedies for pregnancy, like First Aid Kit, the flower remedy I make is like a rescue remedy. I have a lot of clients who've used that like right before labor, or if they're doing natural childbirth, they'll use it through labor and during labor. If you're freaking out and you're in pain and you're terrified or whatever, all the things you go through, it just keeps you grounded and it helps with the stress and the fear to keep you kind of calm. And it's very good as well. Like it kind of neutralizes trauma. So, in a momentary sense, you are feeling at times traumatized. And women who use flower remedies during pregnancy tell me when they've had multiple other children and they say, oh, my pregnancy while taking flower remedies was so much easier than before I knew about them with my other children, or my birth was easier. My baby was so much more happy or calm. And then they'd give the babies flower remedies, and it was just like a continuation. And their remedies are so great for children, for babies, because they're so sensitive. They're so delicate. They don't have a protective shield around them when they come in. They're just connected to your protective aura, right? It's like flower remedies are just so like they're a little fairy dust for them.
Yeah. That was going to be my question. I'm like, I have to work with Alexis soon when I'm going into my third trimester, because I do have things coming up, where I was definitely looking into the whole home birth route, which was wonderful. And then my guides very clearly told me one night, they were like, hospital medicated, period. And I was like, wow, I don't know why you're telling me that, but I'm going to listen. I'm still actually incredibly open to the home birth, but there is an element to me, like very intuitively. And I was speaking to a dear friend of mine recently who did do a home birth and had to be transferred. And we share very similar adrenal situations. And she was like, I'm still recovering from that birth. Even though she did the full 40 days after, like did all the stuff, she was like, I'm so happy that you know your adrenal capacity for how nervous system shocking it could potentially be for your first unmedicated home birth. It's really interesting. And I was like, I wonder if there's some work I can do with Alexis ahead of time that will strengthen my constitution even more. Even though this has been post 13 weeks of morning sickness, I have had the most easiest pregnancy on the planet. So beyond that, I'm like, I wonder if there's a way getting into the third trimester to deal with any of the emotional fears, any of that kind of stuff coming up, as well as begin to treat to strengthen my body for an unmedicated experience.
Yeah. First of all, I think it's great that you trusted that, because I think the transfer from home to hospital would be a nightmare. Like an interrupted birth, that's like, that would be worse than anything. It's better just to be there and have everything accessible to you and support there if you need it to whatever degree. So that's great that you're doing that. I actually would feel safer in a hospital setting.
Yeah, which is so personal, I know, for people. And I even really sat down with it because when I heard that message come through, I was like, well, obviously I always listen and there's a reason I'm being communicated that. So I'm going to listen for this first birth. I've assessed so many births I've known in my 20s to 30s now. And one thing that I really admire is, and that's why I love non-judgmental towards anybody, how their pregnancy is, how they want to birth. I have no judgment. And I really looked at myself and I was like, I have no ego in this experience because this birth experience has nothing to do with me. It's the journey for this baby, period. Like I would see the difference in a lot of births that I would hear from. It was much more about a mom's experience, and then that was their first lesson in surrender. I've had a big lesson in it, not getting pregnant for 5 years, of having to have surrender beat into me. But the one thing I see in commonality with the women I know who choose to have an unmedicated home birth or just an unmedicated birth is they're very, very dedicated to it, very committed. And I'm not. I don't have that. There's nothing in me. In fact, when I look at the birth, I was talking to my doula recently, and I hope I'm not offending anybody. I like to be really transparent about this because, again, I really respect everybody's approach to birth. But in my own personal intuition, I look at birth and I go, God, that's such a small part of the pie. I'm like, that's maybe 24 hours, 48 hours, could be 72, whatever. However this goes, I have no ego how this goes. And I have an incredible team, the doctor who's the most notable in LA for home births. So I know that at least he's somebody I can trust. I have my doula that I can trust their advice and their whatever they're saying in the moment. But I look at it and I'm like, I'm much more interested in when I get home. To me, the birth, yes, it's powerful. Yes, it's this huge transformational threshold. But life really starts when you get home. That's when shit hits the fan.
That's true. Yeah. So, well, you definitely should have some flower remedies. And there's a few formulas I have that may not be described on the website as postpartum adrenal, blah, blah, blah. But I know because I know what's in them. Unburden, which I've given you frequently, is a very good remedy for adrenal support and nourishing, also helping you with the feeling of being burdened and drained and all of that stuff. And so that would be a nice one to start building your strength up. Or beauty formula number 8 also is an adrenal support. And then we could do a session, for your homeopathic. You might need sepia then. And you maybe leading up to it, you might need phosphorus. We go back to your constitution, because phosphorus people, they are easily exhausted. They do have a chronic lung thing, so that might be the remedy for your cough. Phosphorus people are very affected by loss of sleep, loss of fluids like dehydration, and loss of blood. And they can have some adrenal stuff. So that might be the one that would keep you strong. We can talk. And then, guys listening, that there are those of you who are pregnant or about to go through birth or that don't have a personal homeopath. And there's a great kit. I use this pharmacy sometimes in England called Helios, Helios, and they have great little kits that I have a huge kit with everything, but I have these little kits from them that I take with me traveling. But they have one that is specifically for pregnancy and birth. Pulsatilla, which is a common remedy, they use that, doulas who use homeopathy have used that to turn babies that are breech. It will actually turn the baby around. It's nuts. And so there's a lot of and arnica, Lacey, arnica might be good for you after, because there's soreness, and it's almost like your body's been through a trauma, and there's like incredible soreness and pain or fatigue with arnica. So that might be good after. And also, it also depends on if there's ever surgery, because there's remedies for healing from surgical incisions. And that's one, the main one is Staphysagria. So for people listening, sometimes if I treat people post birth, they need Staphysagria because they've had a feeling since C-section where they feel like a sense of violation, which is they're like, I don't understand this because I chose the C-section, or I knew this was happening. It was voluntary, but I have had this sense of I'm pissed off, I feel violated, I feel angry, or just weird emotions. And what it is that remedy is like the first aid remedy for surgical wounds, like healing surgical wounds quickly. But the type of person that needs that is also like a kind person who might be victimized. So the body may not know that you voluntarily were cut. Like the body could think that you were tortured or stabbed, or, it's kind of trouble processing. So Staphysagria is great after C-section. Sorry, I went off on a tangent. Oh, so guys, there's a kit from Helios that's for pregnancy and childbirth that has, I think, 36 remedies that is for like common things, like if you're panicking, irritable, whatever you can take to help you.
I love that. And yeah, I've been feeling really called back to unburden in many ways lately. So I think that's the next remedy to move on to. And it's fine to do it this early in preparation.
Totally. If you take remedies through your whole pregnancy now, it'll just make it easier. And I think that unburden is kind of good for you because there are remedies in there that are kind of your type remedies. Like there's remedies for people who are really responsible and work-oriented or have a lot of responsibility placed on them. They're mothers or CEOs or bosses or fathers, people that just through their circumstances do have a lot of responsibility, and it can take the fun out of things. Like you might be totally productive, but it can cause like tension in your shoulders or overdoing it, or like loving to work and loving everything so much, but being too perfectionistic. So I think there are remedies in there that kind of will always resonate with you.
I love that. And my last two questions I have for you. First is, you mentioned it in the top and we've sort of alluded to it here, but for instance, I took Unburden last year at the end of the year. And it carried me, I'd say, into probably March, maybe almost. Where is it? Is it life circumstances that happen where we need to retake a remedy again because we get so out of vibration with that correction we've had from a remedy?
Yeah, like I circle around, I'm going to say like I probably take 3 or 4 of my formulas in cycles. Like I take my personal assistant a lot, which is motivating. But there's remedies in there that might be more like from my constitution. So remember I was saying Dr. Luke said, like, you're not lackluster, that's just the state you're in. So some of my formulas will be specifically for a temporary state you're passing through, and you'll like them, you'll feel good on them, and they helped you with that kind of meat and potatoes remedies, right? And then there'll be remedies that people are like, God, I just love wallflower, even though I'm not feeling shy anymore, but I just feel so good on it. And that's because there's a thing in flower essence therapy called type remedies or soul types. And Dr. Bach created 38 remedies, but originally he only made 12, or he found 12, because he was really trying to find a system for types of people. And he thought if you treat the personality of the patient, their body will heal itself. And he observed his patients and he deduced that there were 12 soul types. We all have a different lesson to learn when we come in. We operate differently. And so in my 23 formulas, all of them have type remedies in them for personalities. So it's likely that your type remedy is in that unburden. And I'm going to guess it's probably vervain. Vervain people are very passionate and enthusiastic, and they're excited, and they love learning, and they love connecting people and getting people excited about things. They're great producers, and they're great leaders, and they have a real sense of justice, and like they're passionate about their beliefs, and but they tend to overwork or they tend to be perfectionist in their work. So that can create a burnout. So I see a lot of vervain patients. They look exhausted and they're not sparkly and fiery. They're depleted. But I find out, it's through their vervain nature that they did that, and you might be vervain.
Wow.
So long story short, yes, you kind of can go through any remedy and circle back to one that you used before because you're like, oh, here I am. I'm in that pattern again. I get into that, my personal assistant pattern again, when I realize like, oh, I'm procrastinating. I'm not making a decision. I'm kind of like Monday morning feeling all the time. And that's just something I habitually go to.
Absolutely. And about how long does it take to cycle, or does it just depend on when you find yourself in that cycle again?
Yeah, it just depends. Like everybody's different, but the remedies usually take about 3 weeks to kick in and this is if you have a chronic issue you've had for a long time, it'll take about 3 weeks to a month to see changes. If you have something of recent onset, then and you took first aid kit, it would work immediately. I have noticed the more recent the new pattern started, the more quickly you'll feel the remedy for that situation. And then if it's just a thing, it's temporary, usually you just take about one bottle and you move through that layer, and then you'll find new feelings will come up and you'll be like, oh, I don't feel like that at all. But say you have something like prolonged childhood trauma and abandonment that went on from birth to 16 or whatever. I have a formula called Wholehearted that's for both recent breakups and loss and grief. A lot of people are actually using it right now during this time, even though there haven't been losses or breakups. There's a feeling of loss and grief that we're all going through. So anyway, you would take that, and then you'd feel great after a month, but nothing new has come up in your symptom picture or your emotional profile. You just feel a little better. Then I would suggest taking the Wholehearted for maybe 2 to 3 bottles worth to really have deep healing so that you don't have any of those patterns anymore. And you'll know when you're done with the remedy. It's you either forget to take it, you're not drawn to it, you feel new feelings coming up.
That makes total sense.
So with the Unblocked, 1 bottle lasts a month. So for sure people will be feeling it by around when the bottle gets to about a quarter, they'll notice, or around day 21, I feel a change. And then when they finish that bottle, they might want to repeat it. Wow, if they just feel great and nothing's changed, then they might want to let it ride and get another one. Or they might be like, well, I've cleared that layer and now this other thing has come up and I'm ready to go to that.
Wow. That helps me a lot because I always thought you just take the one and that's it. So that's really helpful of cycling and how to know and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, we say in homeopathy that, with dosing that, say I give you a dose of Rumex and you feel better with your cough and you say, when should I take it again? And I'm like, don't take it again until you feel the symptoms return. We say that we want to exhaust the action of the remedy. We want to get every little thing, squeeze every little drop we can out of what that remedy can do for us before we change it or take it again. Or that's in homeopathy. With flowers, you want to get everything you can out of that layer or that stage. And then you can tell when you're ready to move on.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that makes a lot clearer sense to me. So I love that. And then my last question for you is, because I think a lot of people don't realize how effective this is, but remedies and homeopathy on dogs, on pets.
Oh my God, dogs and pets. I actually have a lot of dog clients now. They're secretly contacting me hey, my owner doesn't know I'm calling you, but yeah, I treat the humans and then they're like, would this work on my dog? They're very simple. That's why, and just like children don't have a lot of layers and programming, pets are just simple. And it's usually trauma, if they're rescues, and whether or not it's manifesting with aggression or they're biting people or they're hiding under the sofa and peeing on the floor. If they're a rescue, we don't know what's happened to them before. And so I always start pets with first aid kit because it's just the universal de-traumatizer, and for humans too. So you would put first aid kit in their water dishes, just a dropper full in the morning in the water bowl. And that will start getting them to a baseline, like where you see what they're like without their trauma, right? You see their natures, and usually they're pretty simple, and it's usually fear. So I don't know. Once first aid kit happens, they're usually pretty good. I do make some custom remedies for some animals, but that's just because their owners have access to me as their practitioner. You know what I mean?
Right. And they respond to it super quickly.
Super fast, like usually within days.
Wow.
And homeopathy can be used on them too. Like, I mean, aconite and arnica, by the way, also for humans, aconite and arnica are the two remedies. If you're at all interested in homeopathy, those are the two that you should just keep in your bag all the time, because they're for trauma and accidents, emergencies, and they're, life-saving, if I may say that. You can give them to animals as well. So arnica would be for an injury and trauma, like if they're hit by a car or you're hit by a car, you would take arnica, which would help bring you out of a traumatic state, but also help heal the physical, the soreness and bruising, and help speed up the healing. With animals, you can dissolve the pellets in a few ounces of water. Aconite is also for shock and trauma, but that's for, like, say you're not hurt physically, but you have a near-death thing where you do have a car accident. You're just terrified, or you've been anxious since a near-death thing where you're just in terror. You take aconite, 1 dose, 200 C, and it can remove the trauma from your being so that the fear goes. So those two, I think, are like the most important. And I like in a 200 C potency, because lower than that, you're not really going to feel it much. I'm also I'm sending out a newsletter this week all about winter homeopathy, cold, flu, and stomach flu remedies. And there's going to be so much info in there on that stuff.
I love it. Oh my gosh, amazing. If they're doing, for instance, the first aid remedy that they can get directly from your site, how long do you keep them on that? If it's a rescue who does have trauma, like my mom's dog, who's way better a year later now, but she's still her dog sitter. She tries to bite her. I know my mom has first aid kit from working with you. And if she does the droppers, how long does she continue that? Is it like a full month kind of thing like we do?
Oh, until they seem better. And like, you want them to seem better for a good 3 weeks or 2 weeks, so that, like, say they seem better and you immediately stop and then they go back to the way they were. I'd say, like, let it, so that it really took, like, okay, they're solidly out of that state. And then say they seem better and then they just bite once in a while. What would be a good one is, okay, I have a kids formula. Say people treat their dogs with first aid kit and they seem less traumatized and less fearful, and it's done something, but they've plateaued. I have a kids formula called Goody Gumdrops. It's for kids with tantrums and acting out, aggressive, jealous, like all the terrible two behavior. So I have a feeling that would be really good for a dog who is biting, but after you've done a round of first aid kit. Like, if after a month of first aid kit in their water dishes, they're like still an asshole, then you could go Goody Gumdrops.
Okay, good. Oh, I didn't even realize you have a full kids line. I'm looking right now. You have Dreamboat, Smarty Pants, Magic Shield, Goody Gumdrops. I'm sorry, this is one last thing, but a lot of people, I'm sure, are listening and have children. Will you walk us through briefly each of those who have kids?
Yeah. So first aid kit is basically just like the adult one, but it's alcohol free. So all of them are alcohol free in a base of organic vegetable glycerin, sustainable, ethical palm glycerin. That's like the least allergenic one I found. So first aid is great for any trauma, or if a baby's inconsolable or child is inconsolable, teething. So many parents have told me they stopped using kids' Tylenol during teething, and like they're just immediately calm. Amazing on an airplane if a baby is feeling like, I've heard those screaming babies on planes. I just feel so bad for them, and their ears hurt and they're freaked out, or before travel and they're anxious. So any age really. And it's just for like immediate relief and comforting. And then Dreamboat is really good for sleep issues. A lot of children, probably phosphorus kids or pulsatilla children, they just have a lot of energy and they don't want to go to bed and they're like resist going to sleep and they come in and keep asking questions, or they want to get in bed with mommy, or when they're just starting to get sleep trained, they can't sleep through the night. The Dreamboat just calms them. And by the way, all my kids' formulas have separation anxiety formulas in them. So even if it's not listed in the symptoms, it's because children fundamentally, if they're off balance at the core, I feel that they're feeling unsafe and they want to connect with you and they feel alone. So no matter how it manifests, I feel like I always want to give them that because it's a comfort to feel like they're loved and protected. And so Dreamboat is great and it's calming. So if you have a hyperactive kid, even if they're sleeping at night, if in the daytime they're bouncing off the walls, Dreamboat will help just kind of stabilize them. But it's great because it's not like herbal relaxing things like kava kava or skullcap where you're actually drugging the kid into submission. I mean, yeah, they're herbs and natural, but like you don't want a sedated child, right? You want just like someone who's kind of like feels okay with their energy level. And so you can give Dreamboat in the day for that. And preferably if you can give it 4 times a day for kids with sleep problems. But if not, you can just do it before bed if you like it after dinner and before bedtime. And then Magic Shield is for children who are really sensitive and fearful and anxious and they're scared of first day of school and they could be shy. They could be just very gentle and sensitive and delicate and they feel they need a lot of extra support. And I just feel tenderness when I talk about the Magic Shield child. I wanted that remedy when I was little. I was so shy and delicate. That's how I could describe it. And also sensitive, like psychically, maybe nightmares. You know, I have kids who feel like they're just always afraid their mommy or daddy's going to be killed or like just awful fears, or they're afraid of fires or robbers or nightmares, all that stuff. It helps them just feel really safe and protected and slowly builds their courage up so that they can feel like really confident and stand on their own. And it's good for transition. So even for kids that are not fearful by nature, but like right now, there's a lot of kids that are anxious and they're picking up on their parents' anxiety and they're like feeling afraid of school and hugging people and like they don't know what is going on. And so I think Magic Shield is the best one for them right now. Goody Gumdrops, like talked a bit about that. That's for terrible twos at any age. The terrible twos are about learning that you have a will, right? Like, oh, I have an ego and an identity and a self. And that's what we want to encourage in people.
And that's why they push boundaries, because they're really discovering what their independence is.
Yeah, there are remedies in here for, like, I have a strong kid. They're going to be a leader one day. They're going to run a company. They're going to cure cancer. And now imagine being that soul that comes in and you're tiny and you can't do anything. You're going to feel frustrated all the time and limited and irritated and angry because you've got all this like willpower and energy and nowhere to put it. And especially if you're in a school or an environment where they're not like cultivating individuality and they're trying to mold you into something else, whatever. Or after the birth of another sibling where they say like, my little boy was great. And then his baby brother was born and got all the attention. And now he's jealous and angry and, you know, he's never been the same since. He's unhappy. Then Goody Gumdrops would be the one. And it just makes them so loving and just cool and chill and like really into harmony and back to their loving nature, you know? Okay, next, Smarty Plants. And that one is for kids who, you know, for whatever reason, I mean, let's say I'm not legally allowed to say ADD, ADHD. But if I were, I might put this on the website. So those conditions are almost opposite. There are constitutional types like clematis people who are real dreamy and they look out the window all the time. And those are kids who are meant to be artists and healers and creative types and nonlinear thinkers and dreamers and inventors. And the school environment is not going to be great for them and they're not going to listen and they're just dreaming and off somewhere. And then there's ones who are actually so smart and so mercurial and fiery in their brains that their minds are going super fast and they are bored and distracted, and they're just like, they can't process what you're saying because their minds are like on super speed and they don't want to slow down to listen to your boring lecture about whatever. So this formula addresses both of those types of children. And so it really helps with just attention and processing and focus, and also kind of being excited about learning and listening. And if you're a kid like that and you've heard that you got a diagnosis or you're not performing at your potential, like all these things that I think are so scarring, you start thinking, yeah, I'm not good enough, or like I'm not smart. I'm just not smart. And so there's remedies for that to help them feel confident in their knowing and their pings. And then it does help their performance. And then that in turn helps them feel more confident and excited, like, wow, this is really great. So that's Smarty Plants. And I think that's it.
I love that. I had no idea you had a whole kids line. That's amazing to know. That's going to be a great resource. I'm sure there's so many parents listening that are like, aha, right now.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. And that really wraps out the questions I had for you today. For anybody who's really excited to check out Unblocked with us this month, you can follow the link below and you'll get to experience this really cool remedy that's so powerful, that's going to take the work you're doing in here far, far, far deeper.
Yes. And I'm excited to have all these new, I don't know, I think of them as our family or something, just that we're all in this together and like going through all this, and we're going to compare notes and hear all these great stories about what happens.
I know. I can't wait to hear the feedback. Are you still taking new clients for homeopathy or flower remedies?
I am. I'm taking a little break, but by the time you put this up, I'll probably be opening up to sessions. That's something I'm learning to do. So just recently, like, okay, I need to take a little break, but yeah, I'll be open for customs, and yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, you can find Alexis at the link below as well. And thank you so much for your time. I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, me too. Lacey, this was just such a joy. So thank you.
Such a joy. While we were talking, I already, because I'm in front of the computer, have ordered the Helios birth kit, and I've gotten Unburdened and the first aid kit for the dogs. So we'll talk soon.
Okay, lots of love, Lacey.
You too. Bye, Alexis. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into the episode, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, we did. And in case you're not totally ready to join the pathway yet, I wanted to share a few of our free offerings that I'll often suggest to people as a little bit of a blueprint to get them started on their manifestation journey. The first place I like to direct people completely for free is the motivation. You can see it linked below or on our homepage as our testimony library. And it's categorized by different subjects, whether you're calling in career, money, love, wellness, and much more. When you're reading about a member's experience of what they manifested, you're actually seeing to believe and showing your subconscious that that very thing is possible for you. The second place I like to direct people is to the free clarity exercise, which is also linked below. In it, you get to try our own unique hypnosis process, learn about the science, and some journaling prompts. And the best part about this, you'll get a tiny taste of what it's like to go into your hypnotic state, bring your subconscious forward, and create new neural pathways while receiving clarity. And the third thing, if you haven't listened to it on this podcast yet, please go back to the episode titled Manifestation 101, where you'll learn the basics of neural manifestation to truly understand this process. So go ahead and check out those free resources, the motivation, the free clarity exercise, and the episode Manifestation 101, all linked below. And in an effort to make sure to have representation in this process series, go ahead and submit any process testimonials you have, especially to our LGBTQ+ community, our BIPOC, as well as the WISE, which is anyone in the community who is 45 and over. All right, we'll be back next week.